How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see. What if the whole purpose of the entire Christian experiment, of the whole Jesus movement, of the entire Christian life today, or any healthy spiritual life for that matter, was learning how to see? I mean, really learning how to see and love things as they are, and not just as we want them to be or we think they should be. It's all over the Gospels. The Gospel of Luke's wisdom: your eye is the lamp of your body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. But if it is not healthy, your body is full of darkness. Therefore, consider whether the light in you is not darkness. Now, right there, trouble is, we so easily and naturally get in our own way about this, almost a willful blindness. What I mean is, the Christian mystics have said over time, most people do not see things as they are because they see things as they are. You know what I mean? Which is not to see at all. Because what I see is often just a projection of my own biases and opinions and ideas and what I've known. And so what I see is merely a reflection of myself. And so I bet you didn't think you would come to church today and get an eye exam, did you? But that's exactly what the Gospel of John prescribes in today's story you just heard, so let's get into it. An old rabbi once asked his pupils how they could tell when the night had ended and the day had begun. Could it be, asked one of the students, when you can see an animal in the distance and tell whether it's a sheep or a dog? No, answered the rabbi. Another asked, is it when you can look at a tree in the distance and tell whether it's a fig tree or a peach tree? No, answered the rabbi. Then what is it? The pupils demanded. It is when you can look on the face of any man or woman and see that it is your sister or brother. Because if you cannot see this, it is still night. You see, from physical sight to spiritual insight, spirituality is about seeing things and people and even ourselves the way God sees things and people and ourselves. Blindness is about being so stuck in those biases and the ignorance and prejudices that we can't see the truth of things. The man born blind, all he could say was, I don't know how or who or why, but what I do know is that I once was blind and now I see. Total grace. Today we get to see March Madness according to the Gospel of John. Not about college basketball, but about a whole lot of theological madness going on in this text. I mean, crazy opinions about this man born blind and why on earth was he born blind. Jesus heals a man born blind on the Sabbath. A professional beggar who had spent his whole life sitting in the dirt streets, rattling coins in a cup and listening to vicious rumors about what terrible sins his family had committed that would cause him to be born blind. The cultural prejudice prevalent in his day and time was not that if you were sick or blind or deaf or lame in some way, it was because God's judgment was on you if you were any of those things. The popular theology of their time was also toxic theology, you might say. The sort of thinking that would presume spiritual holiness because of physical fitness. If you're healthy, you're holy. If you're sick, you're a sinner. As if somehow a physical disability or sickness is proof of being punished for sin. Thus the reason for this odd-sounding question, Rabbi, who sinned? This man or his parents, causing him to be born blind? All his life, this man must have heard people gossip about what sin had caused him to be born blind and whose fault it was. Was it something his mother did? Was it some secret sin of his father? If they believed it was the blind man's fault, the question makes it sound like they thought he must have sinned in his mother's womb. What do you think about that? Well, some who considered themselves spiritually pure were the very ones who knew this blind man was nothing but a dirty, rotten sinner. Little wonder that the healing of this blind beggar on the Sabbath day sets the whole town to talking. Now, at first, it was only the disciples, Jesus, and the man himself in the story. And as it goes, without question or conversation, Jesus sort of performs spiritual LASIK eye surgery in a sense. But instead of using a laser, he makes a mud pie his instrument. Cutting edge, first century technology, you see. He spits in the dirt and makes a paste to rub on his eyes, and a man born blind is able to see for the first time in his life. Fairly spectacular. At first sight, a whole motley crew of characters, they weigh in on the why and the what and the where and the how of this healing. Now, it's really fun to pick on the Pharisees, so here we go. They're just easy targets. The uppity Pharisees are there. All the nosy neighbors are there. He didn't even have a chance to describe what it was like to see colors for the first time or to put faces with the voices who had ridiculed him his entire life. By the time he came back from washing in the pool of Siloam, the man who had healed him was gone. He was not able to put a face with the voice of the one who healed him. It seems sad, too, that there appears nobody around to celebrate this blessed moment in this man's life. Seems he's all alone here. This sheer and raw gift of grace happened, and then it's cheapened because of people trying to explain it away. Suddenly, everyone is an expert. Everyone is a so-called theologian. Which reminds me, there are these great lyrics from this alternative rock band named Wilco that go, theologians that don't know nothing about my soul. Oh, they don't know nothing. Theologians don't know nothing about my soul. Now, I'm putting words in his mouth, but I imagine this man born blind who had just had the most spectacular experience of grace saying to the know-it-alls and the ne'er-do-wells around him, hey, theologians, they don't know nothing about my soul. They don't know nothing about my soul. These churchy chatterboxes around him are people who can't see the light that's shining deeper than their own blind eyes can find it. Maybe they are the ones who have made him blind to the truth of who he is, first of all. His whole identity has been summarized in blind from birth. But what if he's seeing now that he's not blind from birth, but beloved from birth? And finally, he's seeing with physical sight and spiritual insight that is a totally dramatic double dose of jaw-dropping grace. My 8-year-old daughter has been singing these lyrics in the car the last couple of months, a song by 20-year-old singer and songwriter Alessia Cara called Scars to Your Beautiful. How many have it playing in your head right now? 6. Awesome. The lyrics remind me of the blind man's story, honestly, because of all the pressures and fears we tend to feel about what people are going to think of us in one way or another, and managing all of that. And that whole blind from birth to beloved from birth identity switch. But this is a song about the courage to be yourself, because there is a beauty and perfection in just being 100% who you are. And it occurs to me that it's all about seeing the way we see each other and the way we, first of all, see ourselves. And as any longing, doting dad would want, he wants his daughter to see herself as beautiful and perfect just the way she is. And so I want her to keep singing these lyrics. Here they are. She just wants to be beautiful. She goes unnoticed. She knows no limits. She craves attention. She praises an image. She prays to be sculpted by the sculptor. Oh, she don't see the light that's shining deeper than the eyes can find it. Maybe we have made her blind, so she tries to cover up her pain and cut her woes away, 'cause cover girls don't cry after their face is made. But there's a hope that's waiting for you in the dark. You should know you're beautiful just the way you are, and you don't have to change a thing. The world could change its heart. No scars to your beautiful. We're stars and we're beautiful. She don't see her perfect. She don't understand she's worth it, or that beauty goes deeper than the surface. Oh. So to all the girls that's hurting, let me be your mirror. Help you see a little bit clearer the light that shines within. You're welcome for not singing it. But go on singing it, Alessia and Addison, and all girls and young women who are beautiful just the way you are. Now, the man blind from birth, who was actually beloved from birth, was victimized by people who saw him but didn't see him. Even after his healing, he's still hearing, I'm not even sure you're the man we once saw every day sitting in the streets. And even if you are, how were your eyes opened? Where is the one who did this for you? How can you believe it's right for someone to heal you on the Sabbath and still believe he is a man of God? Not even compassion is a good enough reason for any godly person to break God's law about keeping Sabbath. I imagine this man doesn't know much about religious rules and can't imagine why this life-changing experience would be such an offense to God. He's trying his best to tell the truth in his testimony, trying to say exactly what happened, nothing more, nothing less. And oddly enough, the man who had been blind all his life was now starting to see more clearly than even the Pharisees, who believed they had 20/20 spiritual vision. These are the religious aristocrats who believe they're protecting the faith by following the letter of the law, even when they're not following the spirit of it. These are the ones who decide what is true and what is false, what is good, what is bad, what is acceptable and unacceptable when it comes to religion. And this is where Jesus' genius is in full sight here. Because Jesus, if you notice, teaches that he didn't only come to heal the physically blind, but he also came to reveal the blindness of those who think their sight and judgment is perfect. Some of the Pharisees said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say, 'We see,' your sin remains." Do you see this? Jesus comes to confront their narrow vision, and wait for it, ours. Jesus comes to help us see some things that we have not been seeing. Jesus comes to correct our spiritual cataracts. God's got a prescription for our spiritual glaucoma. But as long as we are in denial that we actually have such spiritual eye diseases, our spiritual blindness remains also. If we believe John, these are the very people we need to be wary of, and the Pharisee that lives inside of here too, because they're incapable of believing God is bigger than they imagine God to be. These are the ones who claim to see better than everyone else and who can tell you how God acts and how God doesn't act, how you should act, how you shouldn't act, or who you are and who you are not. To all the Pharisees out there, and yes, to the Pharisee in here, it would be well to say, as Hamlet said to his friend, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. So who do you identify with in this story? Pharisees? Blind man? Disciples? It's an interesting question and one that John invites us to ask, I think. Because all his life, the blind man had been told by everyone else who he was. Nothing but dirt, handicapped, sinner. It wasn't the first time he had heard the question, who sinned, this man or his parents? It sounds like a question even well-meaning people might ask, trying to make sense of the how or why of things. And don't we want to have a cause or explanation for every condition imaginable? And even if we came up with an answer, it doesn't really change anything, does it? Because the fact remains that this man is still blind no matter what my speculation may be about him. And it certainly is no consolation to parents who are affected by visible or invisible challenges their child may have. What mattered in this man's life was that Jesus came along and helped him see who he was, maybe for the first time. At first sight, his life would never be the same. His physical blindness was healed, and by the end of the story, the spiritual opening of eyes had happened too, in the words, Lord, I believe. As much as this story is about the healing of a man's physical blindness, it is about the healing of our spiritual blindness. And that God begins to shed light on our own darkness when we can name our darkness. When we can have the awareness enough to see our blindness, the places of our lives that are out of focus. Funny thing about following Jesus is that once you decide to follow him, he opens your eyes to so many other things in the world. You start to see the world and at least begin to consider what it would be like to see the world through Jesus' eyes. And the more we open our eyes to the problems of our world, the more blind we realize we are to the things Jesus really cares about sometimes. That's the heart and soul of this story, that when we claim to be blind, we actually can see some things for the first time. And when we claim to have 20/20 vision, we may be most blind of all. And Lord knows sometimes it's easier to stay blind than to see. Some of you may remember a movie that came out a lot of years ago now called At First Sight. The main character in the film is a guy named Virgil, played by Val Kilmer, who is a man that has been blind since he was a baby. The first 8 years of his life, his eyes had been pierced, probed, poked, and all to no avail. Instead, he had come to function quite well as a blind person, even becoming a professional masseuse. He comes to know a stressed-out Manhattan architect named Amy, who meets Virgil while he's on a much-needed vacation. Well, surprise, surprise, they fall in love, and the girlfriend researches whether his blindness could be reversible. A New York City doctor is willing to perform the surgery that will restore his sight. Virgil agrees, and the surgery is a success. He beholds the beauty of the one he loves for the first time. He watches with wonder the look of a red apple, the city skyline. But as he regains his sight, it causes other problems. He's coming to make sense of a world full of images and colors that bombards him. He tries to cope with his newfound ability to see. And as he struggles through this experience, he gets some helpful advice from a therapist who tells him, one must die as a blind person to be born again as a sighted person. One must die as a blind person to be born again as a sighted person. This is the transformation Virgil is making from the safe, comfortable, and dark world he has known as a blind man to someone who is learning what it means to see for the first time in his life. There are times when he wishes he could just go back to the way it was before, because even though he was blind, it was the world he knew. It was the world he was used to. And in its own way, it was very safe. I see that movie and think about that movie again, and that's just the way it is with us, too. There's a story told about an old desert nomad. He awoke hungry in the middle of the night. He lit a candle and began eating dates from a bowl by his bed. Who eats dates? He took a bite from one and saw a worm in it. He threw it out of the tent. He bit into another. He found a worm there also. He threw it away too. Reasoning that he wouldn't have any dates left to eat if he continued doing that, he blew out the candle and quickly ate the rest of the dates in the dark. Friends, the good news today is that our spiritual blindness is reversible too. We don't have to live in the safe, dark, comfortable world we may live in. And when it comes to faith in Christ, all of us wear spiritual eyeglasses because none of us can see perfectly. All of us suffer from spiritual astigmatism and blurred vision in one way or another. It's in recognizing that we are blind that we can begin to see God and ourselves afresh and anew with clean lenses. If we believe the Gospel of John, God is ready here and now for us to see things and to stop blindly clinging to what we think we know just because it's the way we've always done it. We don't have to go on just blindly eating our dates in the dark. So finally, in what ways are you aware that you don't see as clearly as you wish? Perhaps there is someone close to you whose behavior is a mystery to you. Or you know that you stereotype certain kinds of people. Or you know you're judgmental rather than compassionate when you become angry or upset. If Jesus were to touch your eyes and send you to wash, what sight would you hope to gain? How do you need to see differently? What do we need to do to see differently? Do we need to better see Christ in the people we meet on the street or on the job or even in the pews of people sitting next to us? Jesus still wants to open our blind eyes, did you know? May Christ grant us the vision to confess our blindness so that at first sight we may truly see the truth about ourselves, the truth about God, the truth about the people around us, and be moved with compassion and humility at all we see. And so think of it as a question posed by your spiritual optometrist this morning. How is your eyesight? Your spiritual eyesight, I mean. Remember how we started off singing Amazing Grace? I mean, that was like 45 minutes ago, but do you remember? My friend John Daugherty told me this week about a time when he did an Amazing Grace remix to the tune Joy to the World. And the point was that sometimes we need to hear familiar words and stories in unfamiliar or even strange ways in order to feel the grace of it in new ways. Today, I hope that you will feel a kind of newness to what grace can be in your own life, to own it and to claim it and to celebrate it, even when you can't explain it, and even when others don't know what it means or question you. And to stop caring so much about what other people think of you, just to embrace the full force of the grace that comes. In an interview with Bill Moyers, the legend himself, Johnny Cash, once talked about Amazing Grace like this: as a songwriter, objectively, I think, there is a song without guile, because those lyrics are straight ahead, honest, gut level, and heart level. Thank you, Johnny Cash and John Daugherty, for helping me see this in a different way this week. That's the way grace works. And so in that spirit, let us sing Amazing Grace and hear it and see it, maybe in a fresh way today. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see. Amen. May God grant us the grace to see things we have not been seeing. And no matter in what place you may be in your life, whether it's a time of celebration or grief, of exploration and questioning, transition, may God grant you the grace